So this one is a design one, okay? How many of you, I mean, I just wanted to gather quick info about you guys. How many of you work or like to or interested in design in in some aspect? Okay. So there is a one fact I wanted to state first. Whether you are a backend engineer, AI, ML, or anybody, UI is the one where your user gonna interact with the product. So this is a very important piece in every specific solution you build. It's also very important to understand certain nuances around that, and also understand how this whole thing actually piece together and become a product or solution which you're trying to build. This one is pretty much around design systems. So I'll be talking about those. Little bit about me, I think, which is already was in the introduction, so I'll skip that. So what we are actually going to discuss over here is what these design systems are. I mean, they are a little bit high from last 2-3 years, I would say. Earlier, people were calling them component libraries, and Bootstrap came and all those things happens. But now it's have a different naming culture called design system. So we'll be looking at it, what it is and how it expands. We also will discussing how does it matter whether I need a design system or not. So I'll give you some certain pointers to understand why the necessity is there. Then if you want to build one for your company, for your product, for yourself, how you can get started with that. And then when I was working in Adobe and working in Naukri, specifically, there are 2 large companies in India, and there I have created design system from scratch, and a couple of them are open source as of now. What are the challenges and solutions I actually been throughout that journey where I have started this whole ecosystem of design system in those companies. So certain learnings which I had over there. So this is the chapter 1. I like to call my topics in a chapter and all those specific format. I wanted to make it a little bit more interactive, so if any specific point, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand and we can get to that. So typically, a design system is very collaborative or collection of reusable components or any specific guideline or I would say compliance or anything which you create for either for your organization or for your product or for your project specifically. These tools actually, these specific guidelines or specific rules help you to move forward rather than rethinking them all over again and again. So we can create them once and then reuse them as many times as feasible. In a typical design system, the whole ecosystem of a product or a company or a emotion of a company can be involved. It can talk about your design language, that what kind of design sentiment you're trying to use, whether it's going to be more of a people realistic images or illustration based specific sentiment, or it's also talk about your visual language, like whether you are doing hand drawn iconography or some very pre-made any structure around that. It's also talk about your style guide, your pattern library. These are the 2 which is much more important as a front-end engineer or as an people who are developing products and building interfaces. Then we talk about brand guidelines, what color you need to use, how your logo need to be placed, what kind of contrast you can use, all those specific things around that. And it's also involved content style guide. So suppose you are writing a Facebook post for your product or writing a particular ad for your product, all those specific things, how you can add emotion to that, what kind of language you can use, all those specific things can be part of your content style guide. So this whole individual pieces sum up and create a design system. But in this, we'll be only talking about style guide and pattern libraries, and in a front of typically thinking about interfaces only and building an interface for a product where your user and your audience can interact with. So there is a very good book called Atomic Design. I want you to read it if you want to get into this. And it's talk about few specific stuff, like in every specific day-to-day life as a front-end engineer, if we go and look at a design or a page or an interface shared by our specific designers, we can convert them into individual isolated pieces. This whole atomic design process talk about the process to which we can actually do that. So it's talk about atoms. Atoms are the smallest unit in your project can be. It could be a label, it could be a button, it could be an avatar. All those specific pieces can combine and become molecules. Molecules are like your list items, your drop downs, your button with an icon, or maybe some other elements you can involve with that, and you can combine two atoms and create a molecule. Then we move to a little bit more complex stuff where we have organisms, like it can also have some interaction built in, it can have hover state, it can have click state, disable states, all those. So as you see the progression here, the complexities of every specific stage is getting increased. I mean, we talk about very simpler form, which is atom, added little bit complications and it become molecules, add more complication and it become a living organism, I would say. Then we have templates. I mean, using these organisms, we can create a card, which can become a template, like card for, I would say, a user profile, or card for a particular marketing post. And then we can combine these individual templates and create pages out of it, like your landing page, your dashboard page, your home page, whatever type of UI or interaction you're trying to build. A very simple example of a style guide is, it's talk about a very, in its core, it's talk about your spacing, I mean the grid mechanism, what you are using, the margin and padding values you're trying to build in. So all these things gonna come from your design team directly to you as a style guide or as a guideline that how you can develop the front end out of it. It's also talk about various other nuances around that. It's also talk about colors, like how many colors they have used in the whole design, what are the colors values, how they are labeling them, how they are naming them, how important certain colors are, and how frequently they are being used. Then it's also talk about specifically typography, like what your font family are, especially are what sizes they have used, how they are labeling them, like heading, subheading, body text, labels, and specifically strict around that. And then it also talk about components. So, I mean, the component part where we are most familiarized with Bootstrap, Aeon Design, React Spectrum, SUI, any specific component library which we have used so far. And it is available for every specific project. Take an example of Material. Material is for Android build application, Material for web, and all those specific things. So they created a specific design system which is called Material, and now it's called Material U as well, because they have had lots of personalization into that. But at the end of the day, what we are using from that Material U is the component library or pattern library which we say. So a typical example of an atom, as I mentioned earlier, like it could be a button, it could be an avatar, it could be a specific type of text or label or anything. I mean, where the simplest form of an UI, which we call an atom. Similarly, if we go to molecule, little bit more complexity is added, like it could be your list box, drop down, and all that. Similarly, as I mentioned, card can be an organism. Templates can be little bit more complex organism. And then you have these specific pattern libraries where, I mean, some of the examples which I've shown over here, and this is taken from Ant Design. So you understood what atomic design is, what these component libraries means, what a design system actually holds. And you may be wondering, do we really need one? So here is what it actually, how it actually helps you. So have you ever seen this diagram? Can you estimate what this diagram represents? Okay, let me give you a clue. So all the dark yellow nodes are people, okay? and the lines going to those specific ducts are the communication channel. So this is a progression showing that if you increase more people in your group or your team, the number of communication channel open between them is exponentially grows. So when you have 3 people, you have 3 communication channels, like you can easily talk, communicate, and do whatever you want. But as soon as you grow to 10 people, you have 45 communication channel. I mean, you have 45 communication points. And that, I mean, even for a team of size 10, it's not very easy to communicate that easily. It would be very difficult to transfer information from one to another and in the sense of accuracy. So to solve that particular problem, what it helps is it reduces cost. So when you build a design system or you build a guideline, that communication reduces significantly because you don't have to go each and every time for that specific team member or that specific people to talk about, okay, what color I use, what kind of border radius I'll be using, where are, how I can style my button. All those specific communication get reduced. And at the end of the day, you have the overall development, or I would say the build cost of your product reduced significantly. The second one is when we start a project, it doesn't go in a very straight path, okay? This is the path which I have observed in my 17 years of career, that how a project starts and actually ends. So in this scenario, what happens is you don't go in a very straight line, you go in a zigzag path, and sometime you come back on certain specific things, go back again, and redo a lot of specific aspects around that. So why that happens is because sometimes we are not confident enough whether the decision we are taking is good for the product and good for the team, or whether the team going to be aligned with me or not. So in those specific scenarios, there's a lot of cross communication happens, there's a lot of doubt and all those things happens, and it drags the whole product development, something like this. In order to reduce that, the confidence is the key. Like if you are confident enough that, okay, I'll be using this color code and everybody will be aligned to that, the communication towards that or going back to the people and this kind of line would not occur on a majority of occasions. So at least on a design and design style guide, your project development increases the confidence because you have a predefined naming cluster, predefined guidelines, predefined color scheme, predefined component library. So you don't have to go and ask every time all those things to within your team. The next thing is, so how many of you love the product you build? No? You don't love what you do? Good. So what happens here is, see, majority of time what happens when we start a project, we have a very full enthusiasm, okay? Like we want to do things differently, we want to make it our own, we want to share with our friends and people on social media and all. But at the end of the product, it doesn't happen. I mean, we lose all the excitement which we had, we lose the empathy with the product, and we lose a lot of things which we were excited in the beginning. Why that happens? Have you ever wondered why that happens? It happens because you're not able to do the things you want to do. There are certain people, there are certain terminology, there are certain occasions where you are stopped or where you are directed to a different direction or told to do certain things which you're not willing to do. But yeah, ultimately, it's everybody's decisions. It's a democracy, I would say, and whatever vote people do on certain specific problems, you have to solve that problem in that particular way. But when you have a design system and you become part of developing that design system is yours, okay? And every time somebody building a product, they're using the things which you have created in the first place. So it increases the empathy towards the product for every specific individual in the team or person who was involved in the design system team altogether. It also helps you define principles. I mean, I don't know whether I should use bootstrap or go with material design, whether I use red. I mean, there are 255 version of red color. What red you are talking about? How do we know all those specific information? So every time you go with this design system route, it helps you create those specific principles. What are those individual components, their specific styling, their specific guideline is, that's what design system does. And when you define the principle, what happens is, at the end of the day, you don't have to worry about making things right or wrong, because that's already defined, and you can be more confident in all those things around that. It also improves consistency. I mean, I know there are a lot of companies who have multiple products, and each time you go on their specific product, you don't recognize whether this is from the same company or not. Google does a very good job in that, okay? Every specific product you open from Google, without, if you know or don't know, you kind of resemble that it's built by or made by Google. That happens because they have created a robust design system and everybody uses that. So everywhere you look through their product and visually it appeals that it's coming from Google, and that's where the consistency happens. It's also, I mean, it also helps in marketing, sales, and everywhere else. Like, if you're not consistent around your product or around your product strategy altogether, how are you going to convince somebody to pretty much put money into that and specifically use that particular product? So consistency is also important, and design system improves the consistency. So that's all in why do you need. Are you convinced, or do I need to go back again? Okay, so let's see how you can get started. So this is not something on, I mean, this is based on the discussions, the case studies, and all those things which I have done. And the challenges I have faced is more towards, doing this conversation of design system within your team, that how you can approach and pretty much go about it, rather than actually creating a design system via involving designers and all that. So it is more of it's starting the conversation and then going about it. So first thing what you need to do is involve all the stakeholders. As I mentioned earlier, that it's not one person's job. It's not something one person can create. All other specific people who are part of that product or part of that company will have something to say. And if somebody is not saying, they're losing the empathy at the end of the product. So for sake of empathy, you need to involve everybody into the system itself. Who are these people? Okay. A typical core team for a design system looks like this. You have your UX designers, okay, where people who are doing the day-to-day design for your product on within the company. Your motion designer, okay, motion designer is the person who tells you that how animation needs to work. I mean, if I click a button or if I click a like button in Twitter, how those hearts gonna explode and create a wow factor altogether. Then you have your visual designers. These designers will tell you that how your image is going to look like in a specific grade, on a specific setup, or a specific layout. Then you have your product managers, I mean, people who tells you that what to build, what not to build. Then you have the business people, like the people who are going to sell this and create revenue or generate money out of it. And then you have the people who are actually going to do the development, the front-end engineers. So first thing you need to do is expect a pushback. If you're starting a conversation of a design system, people will not take it seriously. And this is the reason for that. I mean, for business, everybody needs to do the feature development, okay? And at the end of the day, the feature you are shipping, that's what importance to them, because that's generating money and that's generating the revenue. So whenever you start building a design system, you should expect a pushback. And the reason for that pushback is this. So how are you gonna intervene with that particular pushback? How are you gonna face that pushback and then come up with certain specific answer and certain specific information which help them understand where you're coming from. So first thing you need to do is gather information, okay? Every company, every product uses these project management tools where you have all those stories and everything listed out, okay? How many time you have spent, how many stories you have completed, what are those, and all those things. The things you need to look for is inconsistencies in design, okay? Duplicate effort you have done, or maybe efficiency for your design, like how you are doing the same calendar component and number of time from the same product, okay? Like one product have a calendar shown at a different way, other product shown at a different way, and you are rebuilding that component again and again. All those kind of effort from your product management tool you can gather. Second thing, you need to start build and allocate. I mean, talk about these specific data which you have gathered within your team. Tell them how you can reduce that particular time if you're using a design system. Show them what the outcome of that particular design system would be. And as many advocates you build, as much stronger your case gonna be. If you're talking to developers, here are some talking points which I have done in many of my, especially those conversations. So the first thing what is important for developers or front-end engineers is to decide what to use, okay? Whether to go with that particular framework, whether to go with that particular components, all those, when you have that particular data, you'll be tell them that, okay, when we do this piece, like the design system, this question will not be the picture at all, because we already have a component library, we already have a mechanism to do and build on top of that component library. So this question of what and to use is eliminate completely, and it's reduce the time to figure out what to use significantly on that as well. It's also reduce the refactoring of the code. Like if I don't have to build that calendar component in multiple locations, because my designer is getting very creative and changing that calendar component in multiple times, I don't have to refactor that component again and again. So that's another specific point. And when we talk about implementation on a day-to-day basis, we talk about consistency. Can I use your component which you have created for that particular page? If your designer are not aligned with that, your design is different and your functionalities are different, that is not feasible. So to reuse your code, you need to be consistent, and that consistency comes when you have a design system. This is also a little bit on a specific side where you can also tell them if they are using component, how it's make their, I mean, for prototyping, show them sandboxes which you have created and all those specific things around that. It's also, you can say that how inconsistent your product is on a various specific aspect, like, so here you're using 3 versions of red, or maybe n number of blues and all those specific things around that. Your font, your naming conventions and all those specific things around that. Then you have some talking points for business. I mean, if people from product and business come to you and ask, okay, why do you need a design system? And these are the certain things which you can talk to them, like show them how you can save money for them. Like, so for their importance is how much money you'll save and how much money you'll generate. That's the question, and that's the boundary they go with. So if you talk to those specific type of people, you need to talk in that particular language. And if you're reducing time and if you're reducing effort, it's definitely going to save money at some specific way. It's also, you can also tell them that's going to provide a better customer experience, because the way interaction happens, your customer can learn one product and then use the same learning for other products as well. So that's less training, less learning, and less kind of specific information for your customer as well. So improves customer experiences. And also show them whatever the data you have gathered in terms of inconsistencies and all those things around that. First thing you need to do is you need also define rules for your designers, okay? Like, designers tend to be very creative. They want to design every page the way they want, and it can look completely different than what it was started with. So it's also help you to kind of create a boundary for your designer. So it also helps in that direction as well. A typical life cycle looks like this. I mean, I'll just run through this. You start with this idea, which is the seed. The seed phase, where you have the idea that you need identify there. I mean, there are too many people in the team. There are too much direction where the development is happening. There are so many decisions we have to make. There are tons of inconsistencies in the product. Then you thought of, okay, let's create a design system to kind of mitigate all those specific problems. I think it's not working. Okay. And after that, you start discovery. I mean, the discovery phase is the gather information from your tools and project management and everywhere else. And these are the activity you do when you do the discovery phase, like you do your UI UX audits, you sit with your designer, try to understand they are coming with, what kind of inconsistencies they have, all those specific things. Then you go with framing. I mean, framing is when you have all this data point, you need to create strategy, priority, you need to convert them into a scope. I mean, how much time it will take, what will be including, what are the some of those specific things you'll be doing first, and all those specific things around that. And the activity you do is you define what technology you'll be using. Either you're going to build on React, build on core JavaScript, or going to build on simply Angular or some other frameworks around that. You also need to do an evaluation about the complexities and timeline, like what kind of developers you'll be needing, what kind of designers you'll be needing, how much time it will take, all those specific things. And in this specific time duration, you also start fixing that, okay, these are my brand colors, these are the shadows and elevation we'll be dealing with, these are the border radiuses we use. All those specific things you start putting into a draft and start fixing those specific individual principles. And if you have more time in this particular task, we also do like creating the project an epic for this, where we'll start gathering feedbacks and do a strategy for adoption as well, like who would be the first product, or who would be the first team to adapt this new design system. After that, we move to the solution front. The activity is like the actual development on design system gets started, where you create goals and anti-goals, what is achievable, what is not achievable, what are your risk areas, and you need to also collect some usability feedback from your designer, product owners, and other people in the team. And this solution phase continuously go on, and these are the certain activities you do, like you need to create a very robust feedback loop. In that you can get more information, and you redefine your goal, restructure your priorities, and all those things happens. And here are some of the learnings which I had when I was working on various design systems in multiple companies and product. So first thing is very important is open to contribution. So never make your design system private to your own team or the team who is currently working on it. Keep it open, so anybody from the company or from the product can have a look on that, look what you are doing, and they can bring some help if they want to. You also need to have define a process for PRs coming from a different teams, and also if they are raising certain bugs and all those specific things around that. Make sure your backlog is accessible, so anybody can team have a look, and if they want to contribute, they can. You need to reduce the maintenance cost as much as feasible. I mean, if your design system is so much costly to maintain, like the versioning system you're using and all those things around that, it will be a very vague thing to other teams to kind of use and come on board on your design system specifically. So look for opportunity to simplify, don't do over engineering, make simple specific stuff. Do certain automation and tooling around that, like if PR is getting generated, it can generate a build preview. All those things needs to happen over there. Then you also need to collaborate. I mean, don't just make sure that as I mentioned, that use in an open source format, but it should be opinionated in and flexible enough so that anybody can come and contract to that. It should not become a blocker for anybody. Like if you choose a different language which nobody in the company know, I mean, like everybody in your company understand React, but you're building your design system in Angular or maybe Vue.js, then there would be a challenge for anybody to come and help you build those particular pieces around that. So don't make those kind of decisions, but yeah, do create a particular guideline that how the PR should be raised, what kind of coding and all those specific coding guidelines should be adhered to, so that they know they are contributing to this, these are the certain things they need to do. And the other thing is documentation. Try to do an automated documentation format. In that particular documentation, create certain context. Storybook is a great example when you're doing design system, because that represents a lot of variation, properties, and everything you can put for a specific thing or a specific piece of UI to work and behave in certain way. So I would say keep it up on that particular thing. You need to define a release process, that when you're going to release a minor version, how that's going to impact with the existing teams and an existing project. When you're going to release a major version, what kind of certain changes they need to do. So you need to define a very robust release process, and that release process you need to adhere to in order to people have confidence enough to kind of use and build product on top of it. You need to create a very robust feedback loop as well. So anybody want to give you feedback, communicate certain things on that, it should be easy for them to come to you and tell them, okay, this is the piece which is not working for me, here where I'm stuck and how I can help. And remember the stage where we created lots of advocates, these people can become the part of the team where these feedback loop can be heard and listened and can be taken further too. Enforcement, there should be certain enforcement when we talk about design system, okay, that if the new project's gonna started, and these enforcements can come from business, can come from product, where they can enforce that, okay, this design system needs to be used in order to get this product from A to B. Do use some open source, don't try to create it from scratch. Like there are a lot of tools which is available, which you can use. A very good one is Base UI. If you're going to build a component library or pattern library, do check out Base UI. That's from a React, and it's very helpful. Here are certain resources which you can read if you want to, like the Atomic Design, Material UI, and Ant Design. All these are the design systems, and you can read more if you want to. And that's all. If you have any questions, I'll love to answer. Nothing? Cool. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashok. To give away the token of appreciation, I would like to invite Mr. Ravin Pereira, former community organizer for Google Developer Group, Sri Lanka.